What's going on, guys? You're on the sidelines with the sideline guys. This is John Toronto over here. You know, your resident Bills fan. Always talking about the Bills Mafia that Derrick made fun of for so many years, but I don't give a damn. Over here we got Derrick Myers, the
Yes,
OG,
sir.
the honcho, the owner of OTS.
Yes, sir. What's going on?
Sadly, an Eagles fan. Sadly, a Celtics fan because they're both trash. I mean, but we'll move on to
No,
that.
the Eagles are absolute garbage. The
Yeah,
Celtics,
yeah.
the Celtics are
But you're a
perfectly
fan
even
of both, so I think
keel.
that just kind of like
Yeah,
molds in a little bit.
it's
So,
very. You
but
know what?
anyway,
It's very weird when I have to go against 76ers fans and Patriots fans because I have
you're like
ties with.
opposite of both.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's I have ties, so it's just
As long as you're not a Patriots fan, because we don't respect that here.
yeah.
But anyway, on this episode today, we decided to bring in a special guest, someone that I basically met through Twitter, but that's all good. Kyle, how you doing?
What's good, Kyle?
I'm doing very well, guys. How you guys doing?
Hey, good. This is nice to have you on the episode. I did want you to give a breakdown of what you do, for just a quick breakdown to the viewers and listeners out there. Met Kyle through his Twitter page, Banged Up Bills. It basically focuses on injuries for players on the team. He gives kind of his in-depth analysis of the short and long-term injuries. Partnered up with other websites as well for the NFL. Kyle, you can just take it from there and kind of give your background.
Okay. I'm a physical therapist by trade. I've had experiences in home health, outpatient, acute care, skilled nursing, like the nursing home. I've done a little bit of everything. I've been a PT for about 8 years now. And go back from 2017, I started Banged Up Bills because I can't remember exactly what led to me starting it, but it was something I was just unsatisfied with what the injury reporting was out there. I can't remember if it was a reporter that just didn't have their stuff together, or if I was just saying, hey, I could do this better than what's out there right now.
Yeah.
And I thought I would start this up. And I approached a few different outlets and I said, hey, I'm a PT. I have this stuff. And I kind of got like, okay, cool. See you later. I'm like, you know what? Screw you guys. I'm doing my own thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So it just kind of has grown from there. And I've gotten some really cool opportunities from that. So I've really been focusing on just addressing the Bills' injuries. I mean, I started to branch out and do other things I'll get to in a second, but really just looking at the injury report and try to interpret what Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane are trying to do with those injuries every week, because it seems like if that information is available, people will start freaking out. Oh my God, Cody Ford's out with his knee. What does that mean? Well, hey, I'm here. I'm here to try to explain that. I don't have any inside knowledge of what's going on, but I have information based off the background I have. I can say, hey, based off what they're telling us, this is what it could be. This is what timeline looks like. And this is what we can expect to see coming off of that.
Right.
So I feel that it's been pretty well received. I mean, my page is continuing to grow in, my Twitter following. I mean, if somebody's really that big into that, is continuing to grow. It just seems like the more I do this, the more people want. So I'm like, hey, let's just keep rolling with this here.
Yeah.
So, I started back in 2017, had been growing and, got hooked up with Buffalo Rumblings through Circling Wagons podcast. They recommend me to go to them. And so I do, different on different injuries. I got hooked up with Eric Turner over at Cover One. I do off-season draft analysis on, different injuries, like the Tua injury last year. I got that done as soon as he was injured, and then kind of just building off of that. Recently started off with the Game Day NFL, which is a sports betting website. So I do a weekly article on various injuries around the league and how that might affect fantasy and betting. So that's something I'm still working out to, where I'm branching more to the NFL, but my passion still lies within the Bills.
Bills Mafia.
And yeah, I mean, I'm a Bills fan through and through, and it's fun to try and decipher things. And it's like, it sucks when I'm wrong, but it's great when I'm right. But it's fun just to use my degree in a different way, because sometimes it's easy to get burned out with patient care, or it's kind of the monotone thing. So it's just like, okay, I'm just waking up, punch the clock. But this is like, I can dig into the research I'm not getting at my job. I'm able to look at things differently, learn new things. So it's just a great way to use my degree. It engaged me with the Bills Mafia, and it's a pretty good relationship right now.
I mean, how cool is that? Just to bring your field into something you genuinely love. So, you love sports, you love the Bills, you love to talk injuries, and
it's very cool to do that. I'm glad I'm able to do that. I never thought that this would grow into what it is, and I'm able to just, you never think that there'd be a niche for some of this stuff, and then it's like, holy cow, there's a huge market for this. I mean,
Yeah.
I've met some of the other PTs and doctors and everything else that have been doing all this stuff, and it's like the sports betting thing has like really been fueling all of this too. But it's just people just want that information. So the more they can devour, the more they can be engaged. And it's like, okay, cool. Let's just lean into it and keep working from there.
Right. So you did mention earlier that when you started off in 2017, it was more so you felt like you weren't getting enough information. Now, something I mentioned before we started the pod, do you think that's more a coaching advantage though? So like a lot of coaches refuse to give that information, or at least in-depth information, because they don't want to give maybe a heads up if a player's coming back, or you know, make them think the player's actually playing. Do you think that's more so, or was it just the reporting, or a little bit of combination of both?
That's 100% what's yeah, I believe that's 100% what's going on. I mean, if you ever heard, Sean McDermott press conference, my friends of the Rock Power Report, call him McDermott walking Ambien. Like he just doesn't give you anything. But what we can glean from all those press conferences is week to week, day to day, some of the timelines we see. If we know the injury, at least the body part, then I could start at least try to extrapolate out to what's going on with some of that stuff.
Right.
So that's where I think people want to know that, because like they know there's a competitive advantage by not giving their those injuries away. I mean, the Bills haven't contacted me yet saying knock it off, but I imagine that somebody's looking out there say, hey, this guy's putting some stuff out here, or at least people want to know about that, just because that might affect betting. Hey, Josh Allen's gonna be injured. How's this gonna affect things? Or
Right.
Devin Singletary, what have you. So am I right all the time? No, I know I'm not. But am I right part of the time? Yeah, I think so. And if I can at least try to help paint the picture of what's going on, then that might help kind of better identify how people can react to some of this information rather than just saying sky's falling, I don't know what's going on.
Right. And you know what? It's cool too, because you can, which I've seen you do on Twitter, you pull up all 22s, which is obviously any opposing team could do, and find certain injuries or go off of that. Everything you do, I feel like a team could do anyway. So
Yeah,
hopefully they don't
they
tell you to
definitely
knock it
could.
off, because we like watching what you do. So
Yeah. I don't know that Adam Gase is doing that, but if he is,
well,
I mean, it's not
listen,
working.
you mean Adam Gase is the best coach in the NFL? Okay,
Yes,
listen,
he is.
he is the
Extend him.
best coach. Extend him for like 5 years. We love him. We love him, the
Mhm.
Bills Mafia.
Exactly.
But no, it's really cool what you do. So I guess one thing I want to go through is the Bills injury report for this week, and talk about the Cody Ford thing. So it says they tore his meniscus. So what's your kind of thought process on why? So typically, from what we've heard, and Derrick and I talked about this before, meniscus is like a 6-week thing. So like Russell Westbrook a couple years ago tore his meniscus, and he was back in less than 2 months. Why would that? What's the discrepancy there? Like, why is it a 3 to 4 month recovery?
So the meniscus is basically the shock absorbers of the knee. It's just this, I don't call it dense, but I mean, it's definitely cartilage that allows you to absorb the contact from jumping. It just gives the femur and tibia some cushioning in between. So it's not that bone on bone like you hear later on. And it's not truly bone on bone, but that's for another time. But anyway, this meniscus just allows it to be shock absorbers. It helps deepen the socket so that your femur and tibia can articulate the thigh bone and the shin bone. So when you have a tear there, it's usually some type of rotational force that goes into that. We see this a lot with ACL tears when they're doing that valgus force, the knees kind of bowing in like that. You could get some rotational components with that, and they could twist the knee and cause some meniscus tears. So we know that Cody Ford's was 3 or 4 months, and you said Russell Westbrook was 6 weeks. Well, the difference was probably that Russell Westbrook, without going into knowing the details of his injury, he probably had whatever part of the meniscus was bothering him, he probably had it trimmed out, and they just said, okay, that the offending piece has been removed, and go back to rehab and get back to play normal.
Okay.
Now, I'm not sure what year that happened, but going to Cody Ford, he has to go get this thing repaired. He's out for 3 or 4 months. And we've seen guys get the, piece of meniscus removed and come back and play. Charles Clay had this a few years ago, when I think in 2017 as well, he damaged his MCL and tore part of the meniscus.
Okay.
So a problem we see with this here is if the meniscus is able to be repaired, they try to do that because that's going to allow the knee to heal more properly. It's going to allow the knee to be healthier in the long term instead of wearing down over time. Because if you start taking away that cushioning, then that's where you start seeing that bone on bone action, where you see the outside protective cartilage of the knee start to wear down. Then you get bone trying to re-heal back up. It's healing up improperly. The not the cartilage, but the bone underneath starts getting exposed. That's where you get the arthritic pain there. So we saw with Charles Clay exactly what happened. His knees have just failed him. I mean, I don't even know if he's in the league anymore, but he's not the player he was when he started his career. But they just kept on cutting away pieces, cut away more and more pieces, and it goes
Right.
down. So they've transitioned away from just cutting out the offending piece and saying get back out there, saying, hey, if we can repair this and slow this down, and you have a better chance at coming back and have extending your career. So there's still a chance of getting arthritis later on. I mean, these guys play football; they're gonna probably get total knee, total hip replacements. But if you can say, hey, I'd rather repair this and miss 4 months of football, or I can get this removed and miss 6 weeks of football, but I could extend my career another 2 years if I were to get repaired. Well, I'm taking them 2 years because that's
Right.
potentially millions of dollars and more time to play and maybe to win championships. So
Right.
they've just started to move toward, hey, let's do more conservative, let's repair this thing, and they're seeing better outcomes in the long term than just cutting the stuff out.
You know what? I kind of like that perspective too, because I mean, one, he's young,
Mhm.
and two, we just had Feliciano come back, so we kind of have that, you know, extra guard that came in to kind of take care of things. I think Ike
I don't
Boddicker,
know.
however you say his last name.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
he's came in and played pretty well, because I know from Cover One they kind of went over his run game and how he's doing
Mhm.
well. So maybe it's like the perfect timing, because we got everybody to come back and play well. And I mean, realistically, I'm with let's keep him as long as we can, and not try to waste his career too early. So I
Yep.
think that kind of works out.
Yeah.
So now with the John Brown injury, with the ankle injury, I know you heard it. Oh, what's up, Derek? Oh, you're muted.
Am I good?
No, Derek is
Oh,
muted.
okay.
Can't hear you. Can you hear him?
No, I can't hear him. He's just gone.
Yeah, it's all right. He'll figure out how to edit it through.
All
Keep
right.
going. Okay. Yeah, we'll edit it. So with the John Brown injury, we
Yeah.
know that he had that weird little fall on the deep pass on the third. Was it the
Yeah.
third down towards the fourth quarter? What happened
Yeah.
there?
Yep.
What did you see that? Did you check that out at all? Or
Yeah, I did. So
yeah,
initially, the first view I had, I was like, okay, this is a knee, because he came down, the knee was kind of bowed in, like we saw that valgus force, which we see more historically with MCL, ACL, things like that. But he came down right down on his ankle. But initially, I thought the knee, and then you go back and look and see that the leg, or not, excuse me, the leg, the ankle bows in. So I was thinking, okay, medial eversion sprain, which they don't happen too often, but they do happen.
okay.
That's where I'm thinking. There's small possibility it could be a high ankle, and I should go back and look at it, and that could explain why he wasn't even trying to play. Because we did see Tre'Davious White suffer a similar injury a few weeks ago, and he was able to not miss any time. So either way, this is a more severe injury than what Tre'Davious White had. But the problem with Brown is he's been dealing with so many injuries right now. I don't believe that any of the previous injuries had contributed to this. It's unfortunate how he fell down, and
Sheesh.
he was starting to get finally look good. I'm like, okay, he's starting to come back, and then he has this other injury. So he's
Wow.
out for the game against the Chargers. I originally thought on Locked On Bills the other day that he was starting to progress a little bit faster, but there were some Instagram videos I saw. I was like, okay, he's really working, hard. He's working well.
Right.
But the problem with that was, social media, it can play tricks on you. I mean, I have a doctor of physical therapy, and that still tricked me, because I'm like, oh, he's doing great. But then you see he's not practicing all week in practice. So
Wow.
I don't know he's going to play against the 49ers. And, if he can come back and play against the Steelers, I think that'd be better use of his overall talent than trying to play against a beat up 49ers and a crappy Chargers team, if you will.
Right.
So
Right.
it's just, he just has bad luck this year. I mean, I can't contribute to anything else other than, he was doing so great last year. I don't think he was on the injury report at all, maybe
Right.
once. And then it's just like he can't get out of his own way with these injuries.
Yeah, he's been beat up, man. And that's the thing. 'Cause last year, all 16 games, never missed them. He's 1,000-yard receiver. We were happy with it. I just think it's just bad luck.
Yep.
I mean, honestly, sometimes
Yep.
you just have shit luck when you're playing
Yeah,
in the NFL, and this is what happens. But
exactly. Yep.
so
Yep.
another injury I want to go over, and there's I guess two things for sure when it comes to tight ends. So Dawson Knox's hamstring injury. Now, was that because he had one earlier in the season? Was that the same hamstring that popped up?
So say the
He's
name
listed-
again. You're breaking up earlier.
Dawson Knox.
Okay.
His hamstring.
I don't know. They didn't specify that, because I wasn't even aware of the hamstring injury until it popped up on the injury report on Wednesday. So, looking back, yeah, he did the hamstring. It's possible it could be the same hamstring. I'd have to go back and look at my records and look to see which side it was. But he's another guy who just can't get out of his own way with regards to the injuries. So what's interesting though is he was practicing full all week. He had this hamstring injury. I'm not sure why they put him on the injury report in the first place. I don't quite know every single detail that goes into injury reporting,
Right.
but there was obviously something enough where it could have been affecting him. So that's a good question. I could try to go back and look on film and see, but there wasn't anything that's going on, and he played in
Yeah, I
most of
didn't
the snaps.
see.
I think it was like 70%. So
Right. Well, I
he
wish you
didn't he
did it. I
didn't
wish
leave
you did it for
early.
that block in the back, but that's just another thing. So a big one I want to talk about, and Derek and I talked about this before. I don't know if you're talking or not yet, Derek.
Can
Trying to
you hear
talk
me?
real quick. Oh, we can
Yeah, I
now.
can
There
hear
we
you.
go.
All right. Thank God.
So it's all good. So the big
Yeah.
injury was the Josh Allen shoulder thing. He's
Yep.
not on the injury report, but are we concerned that there may still be something there? So again, we don't know what they're required to report for injury. He's not on there. That's probably a positive sign, but there are any long-term effects that could be there, you think?
It's I go back and forth on this a lot because when originally he hurt the shoulder, there's possible AC joint sprain. There's a possibility of a rotator cuff injury. There's possibility of a labral tear. I was leaning more toward the labral tear or the rotator cuff injury, just based off how he fell and the type of bracing he was using afterward, and how he frankly just didn't look himself for those first few games afterward. The Titans and the Chiefs specifically. I don't have any proof that he did that other than looking at the mechanism of injury, how he fell, and then saw some of the bracing. And he kind of graduated off all the bracing. He eventually had the kinesio tape on afterward. Um, just something just didn't seem right with that. And then, of course, you've seen he's been running a lot less this season. I mean, if he's going to be running, it's designed runs. He's definitely sliding a lot more. He's not wanting to take that contact to the shoulder. And if he does take contact, it's his right shoulder, which is crazy to think about because that's his throwing shoulder, but that's just how it is there. So I think that we'll probably find out more about it after the season. If he does have to get surgery, if he does have to, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. But we've seen guys that have injuries with a non-throwing shoulder play throughout the season. But I was doing some different research and seeing what guys have suffered AC joint sprains, what guys suffered labral tears, rotator cuff injuries. So I'm still looking into all that stuff, but
Right.
it's all speculation right now, just because they're not going to come out and say, "Hey, Josh Allen did this to his shoulder," because that's going to be some type of competitive advantage. They're going to say, "Drive him into the dirt." Then, if we know that that's going to pop his
Especially
shoulder out
Greg
or something.
Williams and St.
Exactly.
Patriots.
Yeah. So that's where I think I'm at with that stuff. I mean, I'd love to be wrong,
Right.
but I haven't seen historically where some guys sitting on the practice report or the injury report for 6 weeks and practicing full with a shoulder injury, and you see him graduating down the shoulder braces. Like, I can't say I've looked at every single quarterback injury in the past, but like you start putting 2 and 2 together, I'm like, something's not right here. And we saw, and I put this in the most recent article on Back to Bills, that some of the even more severe injuries, they're barely on the injury report or don't even show up. Jerry Hughes' groin injury last year, the wrist injury, John Feliciano's rotator cuff repair, Teron Johnson's labral tear back in 2018. Zay Jones, his shoulder. I mean, it's like you see that all the time where you hear guys playing through these crazy injuries and they barely show up in the injury report. So it's like,
Right.
why would you be on the injury report for 6 weeks and it's nothing? And then you have these severe injuries aren't being reported. So it's like common sense. Where's
Yeah,
it in
'cause
the
I remember
middle there?
last year the mantra was, "Oh, the Bills' new facility, the players are so healthy, the injury report looks so good." Like you probably barely had any work last year compared to this year. I mean, and now all these surgeries right after the season. I'm like,
Yeah.
when you point at everyone like when this happened.
That facility has definitely helped kind of keep guys going. I mean, it's not going to repair the injuries necessarily faster, but it can
Right.
maybe just give the extra boost. Say, hey, here's an extra intervention we can do to at least make sure that you're ready to go. And then, yeah, some of the stuff that happened last year, the surgeries was structural. They need to get that addressed. But if it can at least get them out in the field and perform at, I don't know, 80% of what they can do versus, not play at all, I'll take 80% all day.
For
For
sure.
sure.
For sure.
But, so with the overall spectrum of the league, like, do
Mhm.
you this season has been, in my opinion, it looks to be like the most significant injuries that we've seen to star players. Do you credit that to the lack of OTAs and the not having a training camp before the season started, or is that just like a freak thing? Because Christian McCaffrey's been out for most of the season.
49ers stars. I mean, all of them.
49ers Yes, it was Solomon Thomas and Bosa. They both went out in the same game. Um, Jesus, I don't even like who else went out. Like no, Dak. Like Dak
Yeah.
had a
Dak, Joe
season-ending.
Burrow.
Joe Burrow
Mhm.
just had. So like, do you credit that to like just being a freak accident, or is it does it have something to do with the lack of preparation before the season?
I think some of the early season injuries were due to a lack of OTAs. I actually just got something sent to me by a follower, Ned Hunt on Twitter. He sent me this thing on Warren Sharp football, and injuries are up 16 more percent than they were last year. I think at this time or over the past few years.
Wow.
So yeah, it's I mean 16% doesn't sound like a whole lot, but I mean that's something, you
Yeah.
know. So
Yeah.
stuff like Joe Burrow, stuff like Dak, stuff like some of the other more severe injuries, like there's nothing you can stop about that. I mean, Dak,
Right.
he just is how he's tackled. Joe Burrow, he got hit in the pocket.
Yeah.
Some of the other more severe injuries, it's like, what are you going to do about that? It is what it is.
Yeah.
But we saw some of the stuff like Austin Eckler. I don't know that
Yes.
his hamstring would have been any less severe if he had been through OTAs, but there's a possibility that maybe it wasn't as severe. But I mean, it was still. I mean, he's missed 8 weeks and he might miss a ninth week. So some of
Yeah.
the
Must
early
be on
stuff
his
I think was
fantasy.
just no, I know I stayed away from him. So no, but it just I know he comes up. He's been talked about a lot since he's the Bills' opponent this week here.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
some of the early stuff has been definitely attributed to the lack of OTAs. But then the later stuff has just been kind of it was going to happen and just did it kick the can? Was it supposed to happen week one because of no OTAs, or was it going to happen later on because of just the timing? I mean, you can't predict injuries,
Right.
but sometimes it's how it is. So
Yeah.
That's such a tough thing, man.
Nah.
So I did want to talk about one more thing in regards to the Bills. We do have a game tomorrow. And, I think we're gonna win, but we do need to get your predictions. So what are you thinking? What's your prediction for the game tomorrow?
okay. Well, I mean, I think the Bills are going to win. Now the score. I mean, that's a currently biased view, but I really think the Bills are the more talented team. I could see the Bills winning 32-23.
Okay. All right, I like that. Yeah, Herbert's been playing really well too. So we'll
Mhm.
see.
Yeah.
We'll see if he can do anything against our boy Trey White. Maybe get a pick or two tomorrow. We'll see.
Well, the Chargers are missing a few of their key defensive pieces there. And
Yeah.
was it Melvin Ingram? I think, yeah. And
Ingram,
then
Owosu, and Hayward.
yeah. So I mean, it's been fortunate we've been going up against some teams that are missing their pieces, but like that's been the same thing for any other team. It's like
Yeah, we've been.
we don't have full team. Yeah.
The day before the Cardinals game, I just told Derrick, what 3 starters went out at the
Yeah.
last second.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now
Happens.
I know you focus more on the physical stuff in terms of like ankles and injuries, stuff like that. But with COVID-19, so this Tommy Sweeney thing, did you ever look into any of the COVID stuff and the effects and how players are kind of so like him dealing with that long-term myocarditis, the heart thing?
Yeah.
Concern because I looked it up. Of course, they never say I'm the WebMD doctor, so I'll look up stuff and think I know what I'm talking about. And
Yeah.
I went to look it up the myocarditis, and it's almost like that thing. And what's the high school player's name again, Derek, from back in the day?
Reggie Lewis.
The one that passed away playing in the middle of a game. He just literally just passed out and died.
Yeah.
That this is kind of related to what he had. So myocarditis affects the heart and essentially just heart failure. Do we see Sweeney just retiring? I mean, this is almost a sport to me that you don't want to risk going in with the heart disease. You know what I mean?
It's too soon to tell with what's going on with Suni. I mean, probably what happened with him is he got COVID. They know there's a risk for the myocarditis, and then he might have been having some issues where, like, hey man, I'm tired after working out. I mean, you expect to be working, but he might have just been like more tired than usual, or there might have just been something just fell off, and we don't know what the symptoms were. But they said that the myocarditis was related to the COVID, and thankfully the team, every sports team is going to be say, hey, let's get you out to a cardiologist or whatever discipline they need to make sure that you can get addressed and seen properly. So there's definitely a chance of that. I know there's a Red Sox pitcher that had developed myocarditis and shut down a season before they really got going.
Right.
Tommy Sweeney is the first known one. The problem with the myocarditis is it's inflammation of the heart muscle. Now, the heart muscle, you think, okay, inflammation, no big deal. But the heart muscle doesn't recover like skeletal muscle does. So I'm not saying you can't ever regain function from the heart muscles, but it's a lot slower, and a lot of times scar tissue after an injury in the heart is found in there more so than actual healing up new muscle. So like if you
Right.
strain your calf, okay, you work through it and you get better. New muscle grows. Heart muscle, it just doesn't do the same thing. It just that's what they found. So that's why you see after a heart attack, it's like the heart's weaker, and after strokes and things like that. But that's what happens with myocarditis. It can lead to that stuff because if the heart's not pumping efficiently, it can lead to a regular heartbeat. It can lead to heart failure because the muscle's not pumping as efficiently. It can lead to sudden death, like that hypertrophy of the heart, which normally you would want that to help pump the blood. But if it's hypertrophy due to abnormal changes, then that could lead to that sudden cardiac death, like you were talking about, because of the heart. It's crazy. It's scary to think about. But what happened, I'm hoping, with Sweeney is that, hey, they found that he has this inflammation. They shut him down, monitor him for a while. Don't let him, get things irritated. Let that virus work itself through. Let things heal back up, and then it's good to go there. So we'll see what happens with this. I hope he doesn't retire, but chances are they probably caught it pretty early and said, hey, let's shut you down before this thing gets to the point where you might be forced to retire.
Wow. So I don't you would know this, but Derrick was a big proponent of don't have a season this season. I mean, and that was just based off of the COVID itself. You get COVID, you get sick, you're going to spread it, you're going to get your family sick, you're going to get older people sick, all that stuff, right? But now hearing this, like that scares me for athletes. You know what I mean? Like, like if God forbid, any team's player doesn't know they had COVID, maybe asymptomatic, and maybe asymptomatic still affects the heart.
Yeah.
And something happens in the middle of a game. I mean, I guess that's a risk with anything, right? I mean,
Yeah,
but at
it
the same
is.
time, it's if this virus is causing that, why is it smart to I mean, even half the time we see with these games, right? How is every player not considered close contact when one player gets it?
I
The
don't know.
inconsistency. No, I mean, no, I'm not saying that but
there's a lot of common sense stuff. You're like
the inconsistencies, right? It's just like
yeah, and that's a
Tyler Croft
Yeah.
was able to play when all the tight ends got sick, or were in close contact with Dawson Knox. Tyler Croft was in close contact with Knox as well. So
well, I mean, he was avoided because of his.
He was out for the week. That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, because his wife was giving birth there. But,
right.
Yeah, but still, he ended up getting close contact later on. It just, I know they talked about viral load, like how much were you exposed to it. It's just like, I'm gonna use just a general term here. It's like smelling a fart. It's like you might get a whiff of something, like, oh, but then sometimes you're like right in the line of that, and so it just depends on how much you're exposed to it. I know that's what they've been talking about, viral load. I know it's an awful example, but it's comical. So, but it just depends. I think. But I think it just depends on how much you're exposed to it, and that's going to affect how maybe sick you are, or how it affects you there. So
yeah, I think the scariest part is
that's just
it's all just the unknown, like not knowing if somebody's asymptomatic, or not knowing if you just didn't get enough of it, if that's even a thing or whatever. It's just like that's the scariest part, and I just hope, if anything, it's not going to be long-term serious heart
disease. Why they're testing every day. That's why they're doing everything they're doing, and try to prevent that, to minimize all the variables that could go into that.
Right. I mean, thankfully, and Kyle, as a Bills fan, we finally have an organization that does the right thing in every aspect. When it comes to players and injuries or illnesses, or obviously now with COVID, they got things that locked down, right? And you have you have the Titans who just went free and said, fuck a mask. And you have the Ravens coach. You guys see that? The Ravens conditioning coach. I'm one of the I'll find your Twitter and know you do some dumb shit. So he was fined and suspended or whatever. Go to his page. He's an anti-masker. So
of course,
you brought COVID to your team, because you refused to wear a mask. It's like, do they work 100%? I don't even know that. I don't think anybody knows it. But just do what you need to do, right? Like that's what it goes down to. And normally the Ravens are a good organization. You got when Ozzie Newsome was there, he had to lock down. But it's just so shocking to me that people don't do the simple things to avoid a heart disease or sudden death or COVID.
People are selfish, I guess. That's what it comes down to.
Lack of humanity, basically. But
listen, that's the thing. I don't even know how we're going to start the NBA season, because again, they had this bubble in Orlando, which was absolutely perfect.
Right.
But I still have not heard of a plan that's been put in place in terms of what's going to happen for this coming season, because from what it looks like, it's just back to normal. And if it's back
I,
to normal, this is going to end up prolonging everything.
right.
Everything.
Right.
Like I'm
But I think
prepared for
it
this
goes
to be
back
going on for
to
another year.
yeah. Well, I prepare at least a year is my
Yeah.
guess before anything's ever really back to truly normal.
Yeah.
Probably a year. And
Yeah.
we're in New York State. We'll probably won't be back for 5 years. So,
Yeah.
but my thing is just what I said. It depends on every team, every organization, every staff member that's going to do their best to make sure their players,
Yeah.
families, and so on and so forth, fans, if they open up the stadium, are safe. Cleaning
Yeah.
protocols, things like that. I mean, you got to do your best. We're just in a situation. Look, we will never be the way we were ever again in terms of sports, in terms of life, in terms of anything. Anything we were so used to after all
Not
the
at least for several years until
for
we
several
really
years,
bracket this.
the
Yeah.
normal
Yeah.
will be so different
Yeah.
going forward.
Yep.
And we just got to accept it. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
now when it comes to injuries, again, we're gonna keep bugging you nonstop about injuries, which I'm sure you don't mind. But a quick question I had, it was just a random one I wrote down before you got on. So I've always looked at recovery time for injuries, and I'm naive for thinking this way, of just for the injury. I hurt my ankle, it's healed, I play. But wouldn't, and I guess the answer is yes, along with it, game shape is a thing, right? So when recovery time is given, is that specifically only for an injury, or is that including getting myself back into cardio shape and the ankle strong, the muscles around the ankle strong, or whatever the case is?
Uh, that's a good question, because sometimes you see different time frames there. Traditionally, when I'm looking at what they're given a time frame, they're usually given just what it takes to get back to, I would say, baseline. We'll take the John Feliciano thing, for example. They said 8 to 12 weeks there. So I know he had said he wanted to come back by week 4 against the Raiders.
Of course
Well,
he did.
yeah, that's how it was there. But then they held
Right.
him out till week 8, which I thought all along, which should have been there. So they usually probably err towards saying, hey, he could come back as quickly as this, but they say sometimes a little bit longer. And even if they do say that, where it's like, let's go back to ACL, for example, 9 to 12 months there, we see guys that aren't just quite all that there, despite, being physically ready. Sometimes there's still some of the things that's working through. And that kind of came up with Harrison Phillips a little bit this year. But usually I see more just recovery timeline and just saying, hey, they should be up and healthy enough to play. And now whether they're 100% to play at their peak level, I still think that's where you tack on a little bit longer with that. But like most of the protocols for, let's say going back to the meniscus for Cody Ford, they said 3 or 4 months. That's usually what sees for the rehab protocol. And then you'll see at the very end, like I say, return to sports specific activities, going back to, make sure you can tolerate all that stuff. And of course, we're still looking for something to make sure the knee's not swollen, make sure you're not having a persistent pain, other issues like that there. But you're still working to get back in game shape, working to make sure that cardiovascularly, make sure that you understand the muscle memory stuff. I mean, that's where we saw, as I'm bouncing around with John Feliciano, he was probably healthy enough to play week 4, like at least from a function of moving the arm and doing all this basic stuff there. But there's no way he was going to be in physical game shape to go playing all those reps that he has. And fortunately, they waited as long as he did, because he had to shift over to center and play the entire game when Mitch Morse went out. So it's like, had he been trying to rush it back and done that, he could have popped his pectoral muscle again, because his body wasn't up to snuff in week 4, and instead of waiting until week 8, which is fortunately what they did.
So more so when it comes to getting him in game shape, it's this is let's say 12 weeks for Peck.
Yeah.
The coaches include that game shape within it, typically, give or take.
Coach, I'm sure isn't doing that. I'm sure it's more the medical stuff.
Yeah,
that's
medical
saying
stuff.
that.
Yeah.
But
The team, sorry, not the coach. Coach would put him in probably week 1 if he could, but
yeah,
for sure. Okay, well, let's go to here. Yeah, I just a lot of time I see injuries, and like you said, sometimes players back in 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 12 weeks, depending on the person.
But
right?
that's why you see these. They give a timeline, but then you see sometimes guys are taking a little bit longer than that. So sometimes there's complications. Sometimes there's they're not in as good shape as they could have been. So that's where it's like it's arbitrary in a sense, but where they can come back and at least perform, I think is where that plays into. So I know it's not a clear-cut answer, but there's a lot of factors go into identifying how long that timeline is going to be.
Right, that makes sense.
What's your opinion on guys that seem to be able to beat the recovery time or the the time that they're told that they have to recover. But what's the way I should put this? What is your actual thought on, should they come back early or should they wait that extended period of time? So, for example, like Brandon Brooks, offensive line for the Eagles, he's playing
Mhm.
right guard. He had was it the Achilles last year, I think, or the year prior? 2 years ago, he had the Achilles.
Yeah, he did.
Came
Yep.
back like pretty much faster than he was supposed to. He had an Achilles rupture again this summer, and I mean, he was jumping boxes probably like a month and a half ago. And the thought is that he was
Mhm.
able, he should technically be able to come back in December. But
Mhm.
with the way that not only the Eagles are looking this year, but his physical preparation, like would you recommend that he comes back ahead of schedule?
Once again, I mean, I'm not his, personal people and whatnot, but when
Right,
you're
right.
looking at the grand scheme of things there, I mean, if I was, I'd be making a lot more money. So, but going off of your question there,
Yeah.
I guess it depends on the situation there. I mean, Achilles, I wouldn't recommend coming back that quickly. I mean, because he tore it back in May, I think. I mean,
Yeah.
hypothetically, you could, but like, it's just you're gonna be battling and just trying to get back up to speed there.
Yeah.
A better example might have been the Quan Alexander, JJ Waddle last year. Like,
Oh,
the
yes.
playoffs were coming in and, like, hey, I'm close to being ready. Can I go?
Yeah.
And so he took a calculated risk saying, hey, if I rip this thing again, I have the time to get to rehab and get right next, season.
Yeah.
And so I think it comes down to the injury, and I think it depends on, how valuable are. I mean, JJ Watt, as much as it pains me to say this, he was a big difference in that playoff game against Buffalo last year, even though
Yeah.
he couldn't use his arm really. So it just comes down to, if I was an athlete, I want to make sure I'm as healthy as possible, perform at the best of my abilities. So hold them out as long as I can. But all those guys are competitors. They want to play. They want to be out there. They want to contribute. Even if their arm is literally falling off, they're going to say, I'm going to do whatever I can to help make my team win.
For sure.
Well, that doesn't mean it's always the best thing to do there. So Brandon Brooks, no, sit the bench, man. The Eagles
Yeah.
suck this year. So I'm sorry. That's
Hey,
just
No, I'm
Hey.
with you on that
but I
one.
mean,
And you know
yeah.
what? A lot of time it's
Yeah.
a lot of these players, I think the ones that are not under the big contracts that have all
Yeah.
these provisions where they still get paid, it's their living. It's their life, right?
No,
Like
but he
they
just signed his contract
yeah,
last off season, I think.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Right.
he's
So
got
Yeah.
his money, but
yeah, it's just
I
a little
don't
bit
know.
of all of it, man. They feel
Yeah.
pressured from a
Yeah.
family perspective, a life perspective, a
Yeah.
competitive.
Yeah.
Um,
I say
not me.
sit out and take the time you need, but hey, that's on them. They don't understand the risks of doing.
Listen,
Yeah.
I sprained my ankle and I work from home for like 2 months and I'm an
Right.
office guy. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, it's just, another one too. Adrian Peterson, his comeback was
Yes.
absolutely insane from the
Yes.
ACL. I don't, was that a typical timeline? I'm not sure, but, he came back like,
No.
no,
His was the exception, not the rule.
yeah, isn't that
Yeah.
like that? So Westbrook is another example too. Is this
Yeah.
these prime freak athletes? I feel like their muscles are literally just like created by a magician or something. Like I don't
Yeah.
even know. Like how does that even happen? How do you come back from such a serious injury? And what, he got the Russian title that year, I believe, right?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean that's crazy.
No,
Well,
Crazy.
just
what about like Clay Thompson? So he just tore his Achilles after the ACL injury recovery. Is that like because he was favoring the other side more so? Is that a possibility that that's how that injury took place, or you think that may have just been like a freak accident type of ordeal?
it's always hard to say. It's like what came first, chicken or the egg?
Yeah.
Right.
And that kind of sometimes what happens with these injuries. Did the one injury cause the other injury? And we see that a little bit more with some stuff like, sometimes we see it with hips and ankles, or shoulders and um, elbows, and there's some correlation with some of that stuff there. But
Yeah.
with the Achilles and ACL, there's a guy. He does a lot what I do more NBA. I think his name's Jeff Stotts, in Street Clothes. He
Mhm.
said that Klay Thompson and DeMarcus Cousins were the only two guys he knew that had suffered ACL and then Achilles. So it's not something we see often,
Okay.
where it's bing bang boom right after that there.
Right.
Yeah.
So it might be a freak thing. I really can't say one way or the other with that, but it's obviously a horrible luck that he comes back from this ACL, he's out there playing, and then he suffers an Achilles injury. And usually with Achilles injuries, there's not really a lot of warning signs. It's not like, poor biomechanics or, trying to play through an injury or something that would kind of preclude all this stuff. Sometimes you're just doing something, and that sudden eccentric retraction of the calf, the gastroc, which is the same thing, it just happens there. So we see that sudden step back, or you step into a hole, and just that sudden stretch of the muscle, just, the body's trying to stop it from going. So it's lengthy on tension, and that tension is so great, it just pops. So
Wow.
he might just pivoted and just boom, it went down. I mean, we've seen that enough times with, I think, Brandon Oliver, former UB and San Diego Chargers running back, that he was just going and takes the hard cut and boom, it just goes. It's like, wait, what happened? Well,
Yeah.
Achilles pop. It just goes.
I've seen a couple.
And that's one thing.
Even KD's, you see like the live replay, and it's you see it move. It's like, oh
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
But his injury, like, it was weird because he was already nursing what they claimed to be like the calf or area, but that first initial injury, he grabbed the inside of his shoe. Like I partially tore my Achilles. When I saw him do that, I knew that's likely Achilles. Like there's no way that's a calf injury. But that when he grabbed the bottom part of it, that was the initial one, right? But when it actually popped, it was the top. So how is it that the bottom affects the top part of the Achilles?
So the gastroc connects from like basically the back of the knee all the way down to the heel there. So he might have been straining. He might have strained more the calf at the bottom, top, whatever. And then, so if you're saying that he grabbed the bottom the first time around and then grabbed the top the second time around, I'm just going off of just speculation here.
Right.
He might have felt the strain beforehand, with the original injury. And then if, once he tears the Achilles, the muscle, snaps up a rubber band, he might have been feeling the effect of, oh my God, like a lot of the times they report like they've been shot. Like that's how it feels like. Yeah. So he might have been feeling the effect of the muscle snapping up in and retracting and saying, oh my God, like what's going on there? So that's just going off of just knowing where the attachment points and how the injury occurs there. So don't quote me on that one, but that's just my theory based off of what you're telling me there. So
okay.
Can't imagine having any kind of injury like that, brother. Oh my God.
Yeah.
How's yours feel, Derrick? I feel like it's just empty. Like I just feel like I see how it looks, right? It just everything gets pushed up or down or vice versa. Well, I'm just like, woo.
With mine, I was really stupid. I was playing basketball while wearing Timbs. It was dumb as hell.
Why would you do
I don't, bro. Don't even ask. But I got crossed over, and but I was playing, bro. My defense is immaculate, so I was on.
All right until that Achilles pops,
and then it was just a freak. But I felt it go under my foot. I felt it slide under my foot, so I had to extend my foot out to get it to get back in place. But it wasn't even a full tear; it was just a partial tear.
Oh my God!
So I got scar tissue because I made the mistake of only going to physical therapy like 3 times. Because I hated the process of it back then. I was like 18, 19. I honestly I wasn't aware of what the true process was, and I stopped therapy. So I know I have scar tissue.
Why are you telling the physical therapist to stop therapy? He's about to leave.
No. Well,
it does happen to a lot of people.
I was.
I'm sure. Yeah,
for sure. I honestly, because I was in school and I didn't feel like leaving class, going to therapy. I just wanted to go home and relax and stuff. And it was horrible.
Yeah, a lot of times people are saying they want to get better, but they don't want to do the work. Or sometimes they say, "Oh, this is all I'm doing." Especially if they don't have a good therapist or like good medical care, they're just like, "Why am I wasting my time?" And sometimes they just don't want to go through with this, or they're feeling good enough. They're thinking, why do I need to keep going with this?" And they don't understand the behind the scenes why you're doing what you're doing there. So as a PT, I'm always trying to explain, here's why we're doing something, because you might feel good today, but then you overdo it and then you're not gonna feel good tomorrow. Saying, what the hell, that therapist beat the snot out of me. Well, no, you have to, it's that great exposure. You have to try to increase your activity gradually. You have to build the strength, range of motion, things like that. You can't just say, I'm good. I'm all better one day. And then sometimes people do that, and then they pay the price for it later, and they're like, oh, I wish I would have finished therapy because I was
All
stubborn.
right, okay. Well, you know what? Since this is an open book and you accept the fact people don't go, I never went to physical therapy when I was supposed to. Okay, for my ankle, I never did, and I hate it. I didn't because I feel the long term effects of it so much now, especially the high ankle sprain on my left. Like the weather changes and all that, just shooting pain up and down the leg. It's awful. I don't even know if going to PT would have helped. I'm sure it would, at least
Yeah,
a little bit. Maybe I could still go now, if anything, and try to get
you
it
could.
fixed up. My ankles are just they're paper at this point. So, but not to keep you distracted. One last thing I did want to talk to you about, because of course Eric is the resident Eagles fan here. Carson Wentz has had like a up and down slope so far in his career. Of course, the quarterback of the Eagles. He's had a few injuries. People try to call him injury prone, and I don't like to call him that because he's had just weird freak injuries happen. We talked about freak injuries earlier.
Yeah.
Do you think they're off of history? I don't know if you pulled up any of his previous injuries and the concussion, obviously with the hit against can't remember who was that against? Seattle.
Yeah.
Clowney.
Um,
Hit him, yeah.
Clowney, right?
Yeah.
Do you think there's something there that may be preventing him from playing like Wentz? I don't think the kid lost talent. This isn't Space Jam. He didn't lose his talent. So like something's there. Either it's mental, which obviously you can't really speak to, or maybe you could, or there's something physical, maybe in the shoulder, because I think there was a shoulder thing in the past, um, ACL. I mean, what do you see? Have you seen anything? Do you think there's something there?
I don't like the term injury prone either, because that would imply that the same thing keeps happening and you're not trying to change anything up. Like it's more likely to happen like prone by definition of that. But injury prone saying like he's not preparing his body to try to do what he needs to do. Like, is he unlucky? Yeah, but it's not like he could necessarily prevent the back fracture. It's not like he necessarily prevented the ACL injury, the concussion. So like some of that stuff. I mean, if he has recurrent hamstrings, if he has recurrent ankle injuries like we see with Leonard Fournette, and not saying that any of those guys are injury prone, but sometimes you see more frequency associated with those particular injuries. But it depends on what you're talking about. But I don't know that any player is necessarily injury prone. Football is an injury prone sport. You're going to see injuries, but I wouldn't classify as a individual injury prone unless they're not doing what they need to be doing in order to get better. And when you're getting paid that much money, I'm doing whatever I need to be doing to be performing at the best of my abilities. So, yeah. So going off of Wentz there, it might be more mental. It might be more just you don't have the talent in front of you to be able to perform. I mean, we've seen that with countless Bills quarterbacks over the years. We've seen that with other players who like they're talented, but they don't have the supporting cast around them. Their offensive line sucks. They don't have any weapons to throw to. They don't have a number of different things. And we see the Eagles, I mean, they fired their medical staff like what, 2 or 3 times in the past 4 years.
Yeah.
And their guys are just constantly beat up. They're moving Jason Peters all around. They're moving there's guys everywhere. Look at the, injury report from Bleeding Green Nation. I mean, just like, there's Jack Driscoll. I don't even know who that is, but it's offensive tackle. You have Lane Johnson, who's out with the ankle injury. That's both your tackles. You have Jason Kelsey's dealing with an elbow injury. You just, Boston Scott. So if you're not having pass blocking, if you're not having the proper weapons to throw to, and just you're scrambling for your life around there, you're going to look like crap. And I think that's what could have happened to, like, for example, Josh Allen, if they didn't give him all the pieces around there in Buffalo. But I don't know whether maybe they just put all the chips in Philly and said, Wentz, play, do what you need to do. And then they, had to pay guys and they can't keep guys healthy. It's convoluted. And maybe somebody that's a little more closer to the Phillies, or like the Eagles could talk more about it, but it's definitely, there's some unluckiness with injuries. He probably doesn't have as many supporting parts around him as he did early in his career. And then there could be a mental side of things. I mean, we see the guys that are running for their lives in the pocket because they know they don't have the protection. So
yeah,
I know I give long-winded answers, but there's a lot of variables going into this stuff.
Hey.
It's not like, boom, no, that's
I'll tell you
exactly
this.
what's going on.
Derek's about to fire me because you just defended Carson Wentz. He doesn't need me no more. He's going to bring you on, and I don't need to say anything anymore. No. So
I mean, Russell Wilson kind of went through that whole period.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think, and you guys can either agree or not. A big thing, and everybody talks about it, trying to make a window within your quarterback's rookie contract.
Yeah.
Trying to build as much talent as you can, spend the money early, so when you have to pay him, you work around that. hopefully develop guys that can replace the high pay guys, right?
Right.
I think that just backfired for the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I
Yeah.
think it just did.
Yeah,
They
'cause
paid who
people
they
got
paid.
hurt.
Those guys got hurt.
Yeah.
And then there was no time to develop the younger guys because they were thrown right in because the high paid guys got hurt.
Yeah.
So it's just bad luck,
Yeah.
and this is coming from a non-physical therapist,
Yeah.
just bad luck.
Yeah.
And there are obviously the physical aspects of it too. Maybe the medical staff wasn't doing what they needed to. Clearly somebody thought that because they got fired multiple times.
Yeah. I've heard stories of just the medical staff just not. I don't think any medical staff person is going to not work within the best interest of the player, but there might be guys that, hear guys faking or they exaggerate injuries or they, want treatment and they don't, I don't want to say they don't need it, but sometimes those guys get brushed off as like, yeah, I'll take care of you later. And they don't get the full course of treatment they need to, or sometimes he's like, yeah, we'll do this for you, but they really need this or this. And of course that comes down to the provider feeling what's best for them. So it's like, I'm not going to go out and bash somebody and say, well, if they had done this, and this for this guy, he'd been healthy. Well, I don't know the full situation. I don't know what's going on, but I had just heard stories about how, doctors have missed things. I've heard, how, sometimes the treating providers, are kind of just going through the motions of things. And that happens in the best part of it. You go to any doctor, you go to any nurse, go to any chiropractor, PT, what have you. There's people that go through the motions of things just to get the job done. Those are the people that really put forth their best efforts. So, I don't think
Like
that
with anything
pro
in life.
sports is, I don't think pro sports is any different with regards to the injury prevention stuff. So that's why I think you see some teams are doing really good and others are kind of just, I'm here, I show up, I do my job, I go home. So
yeah, that's the weird thing that happened with like Tyrod Taylor. I remember he like a few weeks ago, early in the season, he got he's getting an injection shot, I think for like a rib, and they punctured his lung.
Man,
that was a
doctor,
freak thing.
That doctor came up like this. He was like, "Hold on, 1 second, stay right there." Boom! It's like, what the fuck?
That is inherent risk of those injections. It just is how it is. It just happened to be right before a game, which is crazy. But
poor guy.
Yeah, it does happen. One of my friends on Twitter, Robin Mundy, she's with the Bills Mafia fan base and stuff like that. She writes for that, so she's like, it's part of how it is. It's just it doesn't happen a whole lot, but it's a risk, But there's like there's risk for every procedure you do. There's risk for everything you do. It just so happens to be Tyrod Taylor is just incredibly unlucky because as soon as he goes to get a starting job, he gets kicked out of it because of some freak thing.
Yeah.
Good guy. Hey, he got us out the drought. I always love and respect him.
Yeah.
Can't wait till he's back home over here in Buffalo. We're gonna cheer from far away because we can't be there. Do you go to games, Scott? Well, probably with the kiddos it's a little harder, but did you go to a bunch of games, or do you, for that matter?
I try to go. I mean, having two small kids at home limits my budget, but I do try to go. I was a season ticket holder for a year with my wife, and we kind of realized I'd say we couldn't afford it, but we're like, oh, we can use that money for other things. We'll just go to games here and there. So I try to go at least 1 or 2 games based off of, if my friends have tickets or if, I can, get them cheap enough. I mean, Patriots game, I'll sit at home. I only spent $150 on Patriots game, especially when Tom Brady was playing. But
and
any other games, it's fun to.
They need our at-home traditions to help them win too, So
exactly.
So I do want to say this. Hey, we of course appreciate you coming on. We'll give a little breakdown real quick of what we are. Of course, we are OTS. I am John Torado. This is Derrick Myers. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, Six Families Radio through the 24/7 app. And follow me over at John_OTS, Derrick_OTS / head honcho. Just kidding. He is the head honcho though. But Kyle, we do appreciate you coming on. Any words for us?
Thanks for letting me come on. It was cool that we were able to set this up so quickly as we did. I always love talking about this stuff, and I'm willing to branch out and try different things. So it's always fun just talk about this stuff and just use my degree in a different way because, like I said, patient care at times can get boring, and it's cool just to talk about my favorite team, talk about the injuries associated with it, and try to educate people on stuff, what's going on. Because, we talk about how people sometimes don't want to go to PT, or sometimes they don't understand why they're doing certain stuff. Well, if I can say, hey, I tore my meniscus, Cody Ford tore his meniscus, but he's going to need this amount of time. Well, maybe I should do this instead of thinking I don't need to do this stuff. So if I could just help educate people, if I can help explain the process, what's going on, sometimes a better educated person, or at least a more informed person, I should say, makes better decisions. And I would think they go with that with anything in life. So it's just fun to talk about this stuff. And I really never get sick of it.
Yeah.
I can tell, man. Hey,
Yeah.
tell everybody where they can find you. Twitter, Instagram, all your pages.
You type in Banged Up Bills, you're gonna find me on Instagram. I'm not on there a ton because I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm kind of at that point where I'm like, do I want to figure this stuff out? Do I not? But I am up on there. You can find some of my stuff. Twitter is where I'm most active at. So if you want to find my Banged Up Bills, you're gonna find me on there, and I'm gonna be, interacting with you greatly. Facebook. Where else am I? Bangedupbills.com. So it's like any major social media outlet, Reddit, I'm on there. You can certainly find me and I'll interact with you the best I can.
All right, cool. Hey, I do want to say I think you are a superstar in the making. Your page, I've seen it personally, how much it's grown. You do bring a great perspective for not only the Bills, but now it looks like you're branching out to the NFL in general. Almost any injury, I feel like for any sport, you can kind of give evaluation on, which is cool. Hey man, we love what you do. I follow you all the time. I read your articles. I tweet at you. I reference you so much. I feel so bad. You probably don't care, but every time a fan comes in and says, "No, f that. This is how it goes." Let me take Banged Up Bills real quick and see what they think. Because again, we're about facts, right? OTS has always been about facts, and what is more factual than this is the timeline, this is the injury, this is what you're dealing with. And we love that refreshing perspective. You helped us Bills fans feel a little better about injuries, even though there's still injuries. And I appreciate you coming on, man. You're welcome anytime.
Thank you.
Most definitely. Yep. And it's great to hear a perspective that isn't from just a fan that doesn't know what they're talking about. So I appreciate that.
Of course.
Appreciate it.
For sure.
Of course.
Yes, sir.